Hey guys, welcome to a Perch podcast. We interview people pursuing greatness, and today I'm sitting down with the visionary in wellness and fitness. Mr. Patrick Ryan joins us. He's a professional fitness expert, and we riff on everything from diets, exercise regimens, proper pickle placement on a burger, and the efficacy of lifelong participation in mainstream sports like CrossFit and powerlifting. Pat changed what I thought I knew about what it means to get and be fit, as well as what roles being present and creating balance fill in everyone's life. This guy is a certified and degreed personal trainer whose career has culminated in the creation of his very accessible and modern company in which Pat can work with you personally and create a custom program built from the ground up for each of his clients. Reach the man at http://aware.training. Thank you for listening to A Perch of Birds, and I hope this one inspires you to get off your ass and reach for the greatness, whether it's starting a business, picking up that paintbrush, microphone, or hammer, or just spending more time with loved ones. Make 2019 your bitch. Cheers, humans.
Right. Until afterwards, I was like, my hands just hurt like fuck. I don't know what the difference is, you know?
Sure.
But my watch had to tell me.
That's funny.
So, all right, man. So welcome to A Perch of Birds.
Thank you.
Patrick on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well.
So I wanted to bring you on because you are a fitness professional, and I like the idea of that title as well as how you have put that out there, because a lot of people will try to put themselves out, say I'm a personal trainer, or they'll try to say that they're like a guru, you know?
Sure.
And I feel like you made it sound like this is something that you're passionate about, in the sense that you're not overselling yourself. Mm-hmm. And in the same breath, I know that you've put in the work, because I've seen, successful stories that have come out of your clients and kind of see that you live that lifestyle. And I think that because of that, that's why people come back to you. And that's why, word of mouth is really what builds small businesses, let alone personal brands, which is what you have. But I really like the wellness factor that you bring to not only Albuquerque, but just the generation and the culture, because there's a lot of people that I'm going to use the term ever so loosely, but millennials are typically seen as these people that maybe we're on this fitness craze, but there's a lot of people that are hypocritical with that, I think.
Okay.
And a lot of times, they're going to the gym and they're doing their thing, but then they're also partying real hard and not keeping up with the health.
Sure.
And I wouldn't want to learn from somebody like that. You know what I mean? So to find somebody that's a genuine personal fitness professional, as I believe you had coined it, right? That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, man. So, tell me, man, what got you into fitness in the first place? What was your origin story? Were you the fat kid eating pizza in school? You can tell me. Cool. This is a safe place. Before it all got rolling.
I don't know that I was ever necessarily overweight. I was a little bit bigger up until, I would say, I don't know. My parents beg to differ. I had this conversation with them. We were looking through photos last week, and obviously they saw me a different way, but I don't think I was, obese or morbidly obese or anything like that as a kid, but I felt like I was a little bit bigger up until, I would say, about 6th, 7th grade, around that time frame. And then, my health just started to shift because I wanted to do better in sports. Okay. I wanted to keep up with one of my friends that I was playing basketball with. And my dad pretty much told me, because we'd run sprints at the end of practice and I would always dog it. I wouldn't push myself. And my dad, I was always very quick, but it was a matter of whether or not I really wanted to push myself to do that. Sure. So my dad just told me, okay, at the end of each practice, you just got to keep up with your friend.
Right.
Otherwise you're not going to really get where you want to go.
Essentially your first fitness goal right there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I just remember pushing myself to the point and to the brink of complete exhaustion at the end of each practice. And as time went on, just, you're young, just through the act of pushing yourself and working hard in practice, I started losing weight. But as I've always been an athlete all the way through high school to very briefly to the collegiate level, primarily through baseball.
Okay. That's interesting.
So I've always been relatively active just through sport, but where things kind of took a little bit of a transition or a switch for me was sophomore year of high school. My uncle was quite a bit overweight, and he made the decision that he was wanting to compete in all natural bodybuilding.
Interesting.
And I went and saw him compete. He had this complete, overwhelming, and by all means, full disclosure, I don't recommend individuals, we'll get into this as time goes on, but I don't recommend individuals that are 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds overweight go all in and try and compete in a bodybuilding show.
Go from like not doing anything.
Yeah, in a year he did a complete overhaul, which still was super inspirational and all that kind of stuff. So he lost all this weight, competed, and I remember watching him compete and just being like, okay, like when the time comes when I no longer am engaged with baseball like I am, that's going to be my next step. Like I want to lift weights and I want to compete in all natural bodybuilding.
So in bodybuilding with that, like I'm sure his diet had to come into focus like real fast.
Right. It's like a 0 to 100 miles an hour in a short period of time, which I'm not an advocate for when it comes to my style of coaching. But this is my inception into quote unquote a healthy lifestyle. You know what I mean? So I guess you could say my inception into a healthy lifestyle was more so rooted in kind of the extreme end of the spectrum, to where it's like I liked being in control, and control was a very, very heavy coping mechanism for me when it came to like, you have individuals whenever they experience a lot of stress. You know, this is also through the 6 months I've just experienced of learning why I behave the way I behave and why I cope the way I cope. So you have individuals who will delve down a path that's very common, that they go into a under controlled state. So if they they have a loss of a loved one, a hard breakup, or a family member dies, what have you, etc.
Major life change.
Exactly. Sure. Some people have a tendency to go into an under controlled state where they binge on food, they relapse on substance use, what have you. Everything's kind of all over the place. Right. Well, for me, it was the opposite. So like when I would experience a lot of stress or a lot of trauma, I would just go back to an over-controlled state. So actually, bodybuilding kind of was my coping mechanism for any amount of stress. Like I went through, it's no more unique than anything anybody else has experienced. Sure. I dealt with a hard breakup at the time, stuff going on with friends. And in order for me to really find some sense of like purpose, I just went to the gym and I would just work out. And that was kind of my therapy, I guess you could say, to an extent. So like knowing that I had control of my health and my eating and everything in regards to what I was wanting to achieve with bodybuilding at that time, that really helped give me a little bit of structure to kind of keep me on track rather than going to any kind of substance use or anything like that.
So you kind of felt like you could control what you were doing and how you felt by controlling your daily exercise.
Right.
It's like there was like, I've got control of my life now, even though Betty broke up with me or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's for me, it was a matter of, going back to it. Like, okay, like other aspects of my life may not be where I want them to be, but I at least know that my health is in check. And not to mention, like, I was 18 at that time when I started making that shift towards being that regimented with my exercise and my eating and all that kind of stuff. I'll be completely honest. Like I was fucking angry. You know what I mean? Like I was very angry, and exercise and lifting weight, and primarily lifting heavy weight consistently as a means of facilitating bodybuilding was a means of a healthy, positive outlet without me fighting anybody.
Sure.
And
just to speak to that, when I was 18, I was almost the opposite. Like I'd done track, and then when I got out of high school, like I just started to party, and I was smoking a pack a day.
Okay.
I was probably smoking a lot of weed. I was, drinking a lot, just whatever kind of came along, and I was working some crazy shift.
Right.
So I was completely the opposite. And I think a lot of people can speak to that they did, not the nice over control. They actually turned into partying, or they turned into what a lot of, like I said, millennials, I think, have this bad rap for across the board doing, or were perceived that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's good that you started going that route. Did you feel like you ever relapsed before? I mean, or is this like you kind of knew right off the bat, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is create a fitness lifestyle that people will follow? So
you're saying define relapse in these terms?
I would start smoking again whenever I'd go for a run up the road. I used to live off of Spain over here. In Spain, at one point it gets very sharp going towards the mountains.
Right.
And I'd run up that hill until I'm throwing up.
Right.
And then I come back home, and then we'd have people over that night, and they're outside smoking, and I go, oh, fuck it. I ran today.
Okay.
So I'd start, did you ever have a scenario like that where you...
No, not necessarily, but it was a very interesting balance, because obviously I'm working through all this during the middle of college. You know what I mean? So like there was a huge identity consistent, just like anybody else deals with it, I would say a consistent identity crisis where it's like, I didn't drink, I wasn't into any substance use, but I was hanging out with people that were into all that kind of stuff. So I was constantly immersed in this environment that was not conducive. Yeah. That was not conducive to what I was wanting to do. But I never caved to that kind of stuff, but it's ultimately life is a balance, right? So it's very interesting. I'm nowhere near as strict or as over controlled as I was during that point in my life, because it's certainly a balance, because you can have too much of a good thing.
Right.
Like you can die from consuming too much water,
right.
and water is like the essence of life, right?
Inherently supposed to be good.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, you as time goes, like there's no teacher quite like experience. So just going through that consistent experience of, okay, I'm in this over-controlled territory, which I did for close to 3 years. At that point in time, I didn't cut it loose until I was about 21, 22 years old, where I had to kind of make a little bit more of a functional shift with my eating and exercise. But yeah, like looking back on that, I look back and it's like, it's great because that's part of my story, but it was not a sustainable dynamic, which is why I'm no longer part of that. Like although I know how to coach people through contest prep and really strict diets and all that kind of stuff, it's not my niche. Like, and I don't think it promotes a sustainable and maintainable lifestyle habit for that individual.
That reminds me, and not to go on a tangent, but that reminds me of when people say the word diet, like I'm going on this diet, and I get pissed off because I'm like, man, you can't go on a diet. You gotta change your life. I didn't drink sodas for a month, so now I can go back. It's like, you can't. You've got to look into the science of it and have somebody, essentially, I think nowadays you kind of have to shame somebody like, hey, this is actually why you're constantly relapsing. And I use that word loosely, but you're going back to gaining back that weight that you just did in your 30-day challenge. Right. It's like, why can't that be the lifetime challenge? And I want to get more into nutrition later on, but I feel very strongly that people have a problem with things like that, even if they don't smoke. Sometimes it's sugar. Sometimes it's, it's just sweets all day long. I know many housewife types that are just, their vice is really just food, but they're up every day doing Zumba, they're doing, and they're trying to do function. They can't figure it out. Like, why aren't I losing weight? Right. So they look for those fast diet, kind of things, like
a hack or something like that. Yeah. But it's perpetuated culturally. And that's where I find myself consistently or continuously differentiating myself, because, and it's not just a means of like showing people how I'm different. It's actually showing people this is actually what works. You know what I mean? This is what's sustainable. Like, sustainability is probably the main ethos of my coaching practice, that and a more of a compassionate based client-centered approach to where, it's reinforced culturally within, I've come to find industrialized cultures where that's what sells. Like, stuff that's quick is what sells, but does it last? Right. More often than not, it doesn't. You know what I mean? So anytime I'm working with a new client, or any client for that matter, I ask them, I would ask you and anybody here, like, do you want to be healthy for the rest of your life? Right. And I have yet to have an answer that says no. Right. So if their goal is to be healthy for the rest of their life, then we need to structure things in such a way that it's a slower paced dynamic to where I'm not going to lie to people. I'm not going to coach them for 6 weeks, 8 weeks and put them through this boot camp style course where they can, I'm a professional. I know how to get people down in weight rapidly if I need to, but is that going to benefit the long game, so to speak? Is that going to benefit their long-term health for the rest of their life? Not likely. Right. I've done it before.
Because that would be essentially treating the symptoms, not the cause, in terms of...
Exactly.
Because I think a lot of times people feel that, speaking to how you were talking about the Januarians that go into the gym, as much as it's good, they just don't see the end result that you've got to continue with it, and that does take a community though. And I like how you really put your finger on that. Like, Planet Fitness, people can say what they want about a place like that, but it really does try to grow a culture where people are kind of comfortable in doing that. And a lot of times women, I think, don't get that kind of comfort, especially if you're going from zero, getting off the couch, if you will, to trying to get into this exercise regimen. Because I've been to Gold's Gym, I've been to these bigger ones, and I'm even intimidated. There's some 19-year-old kids that are taking something because they're hulked out, and I'm using those 3 benches, guy. Get out, hey, whoa, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't look like you. I guess I'm not cool enough for the club. So I think it takes that support, and it takes a tribe, if you will.
Oh, no doubt.
To get somebody rolling on that.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so you're working with clients. You're doing this stuff now. When was the transition from that? So you were working on yourself, essentially, kind of getting your mindset, getting your lifestyle down. Right. And you started to pull it back. Did you, through college, is that where you actually started to look at,
Yeah, as far as like my inception into the industry.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that was about, I think that was around when I was 20, 21 years old. Okay. So I was still in college. I had yet to finish my degree. My concentration is obviously in exercise science. Okay. But yeah, I had always wanted to be a personal trainer, and around that time, I was in school for exercise science. I would say the biggest tipping point I've ever experienced as far as knowing that I was going to be involved in something related to the health and fitness industry was actually through an experience I had with a family member where I had a family member and this was while I was finishing up bodybuilding and I was still very strict with stuff. But long story short, I had a family member, a male family member, pretty much tell me that, my family's not the healthiest. A lot of my family's overweight and definitely, and I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Right.
So there was a huge motivator for me to change that dynamic because it's a very common theme and thread within multiple families that, it's just my genetics. Like my family's in bad health, so I'm going to be in bad health and there's nothing I can do about that. Well, I was having a conversation with a family member in which he had told me pretty much all I have to look forward to is being overweight like him and most of the other male figures in my family. And I pretty much just nodded my head and said, okay. And in the back of my head, I was like, absolutely not.
Not going to happen.
No. So that was a huge motivator for me. So that kind of catapulted me into, okay, I'm going to double down on this and I'm going to make a sizable investment in myself as well as my future. That way I can help others in changing that dialogue with
That's
people.
Awesome that it hit so close to home because I'm sure that drove the passion through the roof to get that ball rolling.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was, and this is what makes this kind of stuff so fun, but I think it's ultimately how whether or not each individual is willing to reframe life's experiences, because I had no idea where to start.
Yeah.
I knew I was in school, but there's no play-by-play manual on like, okay, you finished step 1, go to step 2. Like you just figure it out on your own.
Right.
But it's a matter of whether or not you're wanting to look at that through a lens of, okay, this is going to be fun and challenging.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God, this is going to be such a chore because nobody's doing this for me. So like I was in college and knew that I needed to get my foot in the door in the fitness industry. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to wait until I graduated to do that. So I just literally, this is when I was at UNM. I was living on campus up in Albuquerque, and I just Google searched every single gym in Albuquerque.
That's awesome.
I started literally just on my time off. I would drive to the Planet Fitness, to the Define Fitness, and started applying to work. And not as a means of applying as a personal trainer because I wasn't certified at that time, but I just told myself, I don't care if I have to clean bathrooms and I have to clean toilets to get started. That's what I will do.
And with that, did credentials come into play right off the bat, or was that something that?
Well, for a job because I was pretty much applying for an entry level gig.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't really take a whole lot. So I just went in there looking for basic entry level gigs because my strategy, I guess you could say, behind it was I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'm going to work at an entry level position at a gym.
Yeah.
And establish myself as a worthwhile employee.
Yeah.
And then when the time comes where I get my certificate, which I ended up getting my certificate just a little bit before I graduated, or get my degree, whichever comes first, I will have had, a couple years, a year and a half, 2 years, a body of work that proves this guy's legit.
Resume building at its finest, right? I mean, that's really just resume building.
Yeah. And then once that time comes, I can make that switch and then make my transition over into training, which is ultimately what ended up happening.
That's huge, man. Yes. I mean, you're probably the only person I know that's wanted to put in the work in that method. Most people just want it to happen, or they feel like the more time I spend at the gym, it's just, I can just get in there. But it sounds like you were learning. The reason why I chose you, honestly, is because I feel like you're coming from a science-backed method rather than somebody that, even though a certificate is a certificate, I like the fact that you know things that are going to go beyond that, 9-week training course or whatever it takes, for a layman like me to get a certificate. So that's huge. Did people see that you were going to school and they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, come on, come be the guy, because eventually you're going to be worth...
there were things that ended up happening that I could have never anticipated. So it's a matter of also creating familiarity. So, what I did was I applied for a maintenance housekeeping job, and then through the interview process, the individual that was interviewing me saw, you'd be a better fit at the front desk.
Wow,
so
okay.
I worked at the front desk for a year and a half, 2 years before I made my transition into training.
Wow.
And that actually proved to be a pretty substantial benefit because I was checking in members, the same members that came to our facility for almost 2 years. So they knew who I was.
And people that eventually would be clients of yours, right? I mean, that's kind of okay.
Yeah, and in my opinion, a lot of my job is it's a matter of like it's a slow burn process. Like it's not often, and it's fine. Like I don't expect people to be right off the bat like, "Hey Pat, I've never met you. I just met you today. I'm going to invest my time, energy, and resources into training with you."
Got you.
It's more of a slow burn process. I find people, and I'm totally okay with it. I actually kind of promote it. I actually promote or encourage people to be skeptical upon working with an individual such as myself or in the industry, so to speak.
Well, I was going to touch on this later, but I feel like it's a great kind of, tangent to come into. There's so many of these gurus and there's so many of these YouTube, guys that, are doing the whole, who's the zoo culture guy? What's his name? The Bradley Martin. Have you ever heard of Brad?
I don't know that I've seen his stuff.
I mean, just absolutely huge, millions of views on every video.
Oh,
and
I think I know who he's pretty big. Like he's
a stout dude. Yeah.
Okay, I think I know who you're talking about.
I feel like he's a power lifter, but now he's kind of, or he was a power lifter and he's leaned a lot into bodybuilding and he's just this monster, but he built up a huge following and eventually got a gym going and all that stuff. But cats like that, like even I was skeptical because, you look at these guys, it's like, well, how can I see the value in what you're doing besides your $99 course, you know what I mean?
Right.
And to have somebody that's willing to work with you that, hey, I know Pat, like, and you do what now? You train? Damn dog, you look good. All right. I could look like you. All right. Let's do that. Did you feel that was kind of the mode? Like you just kind of got these people to trust you and then eventually they became clients?
Well, yeah, there's so I always go back to the phrase, people don't buy training, they buy trainers.
Okay. I like that.
But it's not only with training, it's any service-based industry, whether you have a massage therapist, a hairstylist, etc. Yes, you need, you need to be proficient in your craft.
Right.
And I will never not be proficient in what I'm doing and continue to be progressive in what I'm doing. But people need to have quite literally, they need to have their existence validated.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously I'm able to coach people through exercise and coach them through their eating. But if I'm not packaging that in such a way that facilitates a really personable, really organic experience, one-on-one with my clients in person as well as online. Online's an even more fun challenge to overcome and bridging that gap and making sure that I'm still doing things in such a way that even though I'm not working with them in person, I'm putting together systems in such a way or employing certain techniques or certain systems that facilitate, okay, I'm working with an actual person.
Yeah.
This person gives a shit about me.
Right.
And that perpetuates them sticking on their program because they know they have a coach that's in their corner.
Sure. And I feel like accountability is a huge problem. Like, and I'm going to keep circling the drain because it is January and we're in that time of the year, but people need to have an accountability. I wouldn't say coach, but you've got to kind of be a couple different types of coach, right?
Sure.
A couple different types of trainers because it takes
multiple hats.
Yeah. And you got to bother somebody sometimes. Like you had, I think your most recent post today was talking about how you had, titled so well, kind of vibes with what we were just talking about. Act today, quit tomorrow. So like I said, you got to wear so many hats, with your clients that, accountability I think is huge, know, and in the same breath, showing people that you don't have to like double and triple down, out of rage. Sometimes you just need to, go on that day that you don't feel like it, to the gym or to get up and throw on your running shoes. Like I think those kinds of things are kind of huge for, a real personal trainer. Cause again, that's something you cannot buy. That's something that you have to have the person actually give a shit enough about their client to be able to do that. Do you find yourself having to do that more often than, what's the biggest part of bringing on a new client? Is it the accountability side of the house, or is it a lot of times like just trying to get them to be motivated enough to take care of themselves and follow the plan that you put in front of them? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? But in the same breath, you can get somebody out 3 times a week and have this beautiful, they're doing, to the T, the exercises, the workouts, but then that same person falls off and comes once a week. I mean, do you get that a lot where people just fall off, or is it?
So I think, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? Because it's ultimately, it's too complex to break it down into separate categories. So it's it's a very multifaceted approach. I guess before I start delving too terribly deep, I think the biggest shift in my coaching that I've acknowledged that's just so far outside of the binary or deeper contextually than the binary of just exercise and eating is the behavioral psychology approach to my work. I find that that's where the industry is heading in my opinion, when it comes to instilling sustainable results within what my clients are doing. And what that ultimately alludes to is innately there's going to be an accountability dimension of my coaching. Like
Sure.
I'm the embodiment of that. That's
Right.
why people are hiring other people to help hold them accountable.
Right. I can't do it. I need you to help me.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Got you.
But it's a matter of framing that in such a way that makes it appealing for the client. I still feel to a degree that there is this perception of what a personal trainer is, and it's very skewed. And I have a responsibility, as other individuals in our industry have a responsibility to reshape what that picture or what that photo looks like. So, I find it to be very common where it's like, okay, you ask someone what a personal trainer is. I think you get the typical boot camp style approach. It's more of what we would call a coach centered approach to where, okay, Morgan, you want to do this, but you're going to meet me as the coach where I want you to be. You know what I mean? So instead of me actually taking the time to get to know you and get to know your life and get to know the 23 hours of the day that exist in your life outside of our session, I throw that in the trash.
Okay.
And I just demand that you meet me where I want you to be, which is strict eating, log your food, and then I judge you for any time you slip up, which then perpetuates your reluctancy or hesitancy towards even disclosing, letting me know that you had a bad weekend or a bad night. You know
I eat
what
the
I mean?
shit out of some sugar.
Right.
Coach.
So like I'm always running through these hurdles with clients of like, no joke, like they're scared to share their screw ups with me.
And
I'm not afraid
So what
of
you're
that.
saying is you're trying to change that perception.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's imperative.
Okay.
Like when it comes to changing the dynamic and creating, like what ends up happening is when I'm working with clients and I'm framing what my what their coaching experience is going to be like, you can see it within their body language. And with my online clients, I can hear it within their tone, or I can see it within their body language if we're doing like a video call.
Yeah.
They go from being very tense because they're hesitant, they're reluctant, understandably so. And then I start telling them about how my coaching is going to be and I think that's where there's more of a psychological approach. It's like, I want to know about your life outside of our sessions, about outside of your eating. I want to know what's influencing your eating and finding a way that we can navigate that space in a more reasonable, maintainable fashion. And then go from...
It's like another hat, dog. You're like a therapist at the same time.
Well, exactly. Like it's joked about, you know what I mean? Like, people tell me about their problems, but like I legitimately care about that because I want to instill a dynamic with my clients that they know that, okay, this isn't just a transactional experience to where I just come in, I see Pat from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then I'm left to figure it all out on my own outside of that. Like, no, like I've got to do more work to instill you could say a curriculum, a system in place that helps coach them outside of that 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week. Man. You know what I mean?
So really playing to a lifestyle of wellness.
Right. Their health's not going to leave them after we stop training that day. You know what I mean? It goes with them. Like, so I need to get a better understanding of what's contributing to their progress or decline or neutral, stagnation or plateaus or what have you. So, it's my job to kind of frame tasks and adjustments of habits in such a way that it makes things more appealing for the client to integrate. Okay. So I try to make initially, and as time goes on, I try to break down habits and adjustments to habits for my clients in such a way that it's almost so easy, it's almost laughable for the client, where they're like, why aren't you giving me something harder?
Right.
This is a joke.
Give me an example.
For instance, like there's a habit that I coach my clients through where it's just make time, or a 5-minute habit.
Okay.
And what I ask them to do is to take 5 minutes of their day just to focus on one thing that they're wanting to make an adjustment. So it's more mindfulness-based techniques.
Not necessarily do this exercise in 5 minutes, but maybe meditate. Or
exactly. Make time. So like if it's 5 minutes just to sit down on your own and just kind of wing it and make time for yourself, or meditate, or make 5 minutes to maybe prep your breakfast for the next morning. That way you're not rushed. Whenever, there's been times in the past where you rush in the morning, which leads to bad eating or poor food choices. Just make time.
Right.
And focus on that for the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I have a reminder that comes up every morning, and I will say honestly 9 out of 10 times I'm not doing it at that time, but it's just kind of something that I try to stick with me. But it says, "Good morning."
Right.
Meditate if you have time. Stretch if you have time. Drink water.
Right.
And it's just my morning thing. And I at first I thought it was a bit woo woo, like it was. It wasn't going to have any impact on me. But if I don't clear the note, if I don't actually reach out and do something on my phone, it's there all day long.
Sure.
And it just keeps bugging me, and it's almost like a to-do, and eventually it ended up being a bit of an accountability thing for me. So now, and it hasn't, I I'm so bad about meditation, and it's something I'm severely lacking in my overall wellness.
Most of us all are.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and it's just a time thing because I wake up at the last minute before I can get up and go to work, the whole bit. Like you said, a lot of us do. But I think what's big to me is the stretching thing. And as a runner, because that's mostly what I do, especially when I'm ramping up for a race, I need to stretch more. And just having that note has really fed my mind enough to where it's like, even when I'm having like a bad day and I want to like, fuck that note, I don't even want to deal with it. And it kind of plays with the same thing that you put out today, the accountability. It's nice to know that even then it's almost like having a personal pat on my phone, bugging me. And it's taken me listening to a lot of gurus and a lot of personal trainer types in order to kind of like think, maybe you need to do some stuff that doesn't seem at the outset so obvious. Right. Like you said, this switch you hit, like go do this workout and then you're done. And now you're, and I think I'm getting more results for that, I guess, and I'm not getting hurt as often because with runners, overuse injuries are the name of the game, and my hips will go, my knees will go. Right. And it's like, I'm only 30. I should not be limping
this much pain
today.
Right.
Yeah. You know, so now that I'm starting to kind of engage more of that stuff and listen to people that are going to, essentially you guys have attained that knowledge that I'm just barely groveling at the base of,
Well, right. But it's also a matter of framing it as, from a professional standpoint. I've got to frame it in such a way that makes it relatable to you. Like, I'm not going to hit you or any of my clients over the head with a textbook and demand that they learn everything that I learned in college.
Chapter 7.
Right. So that's one thing that I think is going to be interesting to see as time goes on, to where it's like, that is where I think a lot of the confusion comes into play. It's like, okay, I've gone to school for 4 or 5 years to obtain this information, but most people haven't been necessarily coached on how to coach that information in a relatable way.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
And I feel like a lot of medical, I don't want to tangent too far on this, but I feel like a lot of medical providers are starting to see that same thing. Right. In an era where you can instantly, you can video chat with one of your clients or your patients, I guess, and that, you're able to reach out and touch them in a place. Oh, that sounded weird. You're able to get with them in a way, where you're going beyond that appointment you had for said symptom, where, you can actually treat the issue by just being like, hey man, did you drink your water today? You were pretty damn dehydrated the last time you came in, attributed to why you were sick, why you fell off your fitness goals, on and so forth, and I think having somebody like you, I've worked in medical for the last 4 or 5 years, and having somebody like you at a facility, I think is huge. Where I work now, we have an entire area of preventative medicine. So there's dietitians, nutritionists, exercise, and I mean, some of these guys are down to, biomechanics experts and stuff like that. And each one of them will go through a phase of working with the employees, and it's interesting to see where the people that actually engage those available resources go, where I don't see any other places like that. Like you go to a normal hospital, there's not a guy like you that's like, hey, let's go get beyond, all right, so we've got your diet figured out to lose your weight. We've got your exercises figured out to help your knee, but let's continue to push into, what makes you stop and not follow those goals, So when you do these things with your clients, are you, what's a typical commitment from a client?
So I'll frame it through primarily my online platform. I coach my clients through my online platform for an entire year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a 12-month program. And deep-rooted nutrition counseling, as well as I do full-service exercise programming as well.
So it's a one-stop shop. Like you try to take care of the entire human. It's not just, well, this is your nutrition. You need to upgrade for
and that's where I find it as a really fun and interesting and unique challenge, because it's not a common thing within the industry. And I'm speaking primarily even through the online training industry, because it's definitely in its infancy, and there's a lot of craziness kind of going on right now as far as how that's facilitated. So it's not a common thing for people to come in and expect to hear a coach being like, okay, you want to work with me, but this is how I operate. Like, I will work with you for an entire year, and it's going to be a slow drip approach, as opposed to, it's super. Again, I speak to this because I've done it. Like, this is the evolution of my coaching. There was a point in time where I was doing online coaching and I was selling 4 to 6 week programs.
Okay.
It's easy to sell, but the adherence to it is not very high.
Right.
If the adherence level was high, I'd keep doing it, but I'm more concerned about the client's well-being. So and I don't want them spending their money on something that's not going to arm them with the tools of sustaining their health. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and reevaluate my coaching. So it's like, okay, instead of coaching people for a short period of time, I'm going to coach them for an entire year, because I'm able to coach them through the ebbs, the flows, the high, the lows. Like I have clients that started working with me and they were literally in the hospital. I work with clients that are going through surgery, complete knee surgery, like all this kind of stuff all these things where more often than not, you'd have people say, well, I got this surgery coming up, or I've got this other thing coming up. I'm going to put my training on hold. It's like, no, I want to coach you through that, because those are the areas, or those are the life experiences that most people have that completely derail them. And they're not taking the time to acquire information and data as to, okay, how can I do this and go through this experience just a little bit better?
That's huge, man.
Surgery is kind of few and far between, but a very common one is like travel. People often, whenever they're going to travel, they just throw everything to the wind.
Right. They're like, eat like shit, don't exercise, don't hydrate.
And they justify that as a means of, I will put off my coaching until after my travels. It's like, no, I want to coach you through that. Even if you have a terrible week of travel, I don't care. Like, I want to talk about that because life happens. I want you to travel again in the future. Right. So chances are you're going to travel again.
But that's where the hacks can come out, because I get somebody like you and we talk about hacks as, when you isolate them. But if I had a guy like you can tell me what I can do in a hotel room. You can tell me how I can utilize a hotel gym with super basic gear to, basically continue along with my fitness goals, whatever they may be.
Well, and acknowledge that your regular routine at home might be, I'm using an analogy here, but your routine at home, when you're at home and everything's pretty much set in stone and you're just in your groove. Yeah. That might be you running at like 80 miles an hour. You're feeling good. You're clicking. It's also acknowledging when you travel, you're probably not going to maintain 80 miles an hour. Right. And I don't expect you to.
Okay.
So maybe you go from 80 miles an hour to down to like 50 or 60. That 50 or 60 is leaps and bounds better than the 0 that you've been doing your entire life.
Where it's been
just being like, well, I'm going to take a 3-week, 1-month hiatus. It's like, no, let's find that balance that can kind of give you something to sustain while you're traveling. You're moving, you're eating a little bit better than you had in the past. And then whenever you get back into town, you're working your way back up to that equilibrium.
Well, and I find that a lot of times, I had a job where I traveled a lot, and it was really that a lot of people go for quick and fast. Right. And like being stuck I remember the Houston airport, you're kind of stuck inside of that airport unless you want to get out and go, or, you're on layover. It's like, man, the only thing I have is to eat, big restaurant.
It's interesting
food.
You bring that up. I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, I posted something exactly about that, because you have to view things through a continuum. So I talked about, you're going to have instances where you're going to be eating only gas station food and only airport food. Yeah, okay. And I gave an infographic of that shift of like, here are better protein options given the set of circumstances. It's not going to be a beautiful dinner that you would prefer that's going to be organic, completely unprocessed, all this good
where you
stuff.
Don't feel guilty.
Exactly. But it's like, okay, look at where we're at. Let's be real here. And let's make those subtle adjustments to just a little bit better given our current set of circumstances, rather than just being like, okay, I'm in an airport, I'm at a gas station, I'm just going to say screw it and eat junk food. Like there are shifts that you can
rings.
Make. Right. Exactly. It's very true. So, but a lot of that doesn't get conveyed to the client unless I or any other professional is willing to get to know their life.
That makes sense, because you're talking about you only get that hour for most personal trainers, or even not if you're doing online only for a different style of program. Right. But when you know that this guy's going to go on a travel thing, it's like, all right, John, let's get together. Let's talk about.
I want to hear about it.
Yeah, let's see where we have openings where we can get you to the gym.
Right.
I used to hunt hotels specifically that would be near like other gyms, and it would honestly just be more fun like that. It was like an adventure, because if you have that mindset, it's like you go into this gym, you're like, damn, dude, I haven't seen one of these machines before. Or you'll watch some other cat do something, and you're like, I didn't even put that together, and then you come back with like a little additional to your own regimen, and I think getting somebody the vivaciousness in their own wellness journey to look for shit like that is something that would continue, that motivates me to keep going, is to finding more stuff. Like, I didn't really put it together. I had a buddy of mine that got me into hiking in like 2009. New Mexico, we got tons of mountains, plenty of places.
It's ripe with it. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't put it together that it could add to, for a while I was training for half marathon. I did 3 a year.
Okay.
And I didn't really put it together that could be beneficial to me.
Right.
And this is before I was doing a lot of gym stuff. So it was just run. And then like hiking, like, man, I can't, that's going to take time away from training, but now I'm starting to see that even those little things like that, where I'm just peaking my heart rate, I'm getting out there and I'm doing something different, kind of breaks up the monotony. And then, it's going to be more fun when you have that and it's a memory and you were able to do it better.
And just focusing on the act of I moved today, regardless of whether, obviously it's going to be a little bit different because you're training for half marathons and it need to be a little bit more strict. But for individuals that are just wanting to continue being healthy, like right now I'm in maintenance mode. Like I don't have any big goal or anything like that. I just want to be able to move. And even though I'm only 28, about to be 29, like I just want to continue to age gracefully.
Right.
And it's about acknowledging, like I need to just stay on my toes and acknowledge that I need to pivot from time to time. Because I went from a very strict, the gold standard of exercise is weightlifting. And I have to lift weights in order for me to feel like I've exercised, to I'll lift weights maybe 3 to 4 days at the most a week. But if I'm given an opportunity to go mountain bike, or if I'm given an opportunity to go on a day trip here in New Mexico and go hike all day, I will drop lifting weights to do that happily.
Sure.
Because there's a spiritual and an energy related component to mountain biking and hiking and being outside.
Nature, straight up. Yeah.
That lifting weights, I don't think will ever match.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
That's
it's like,
you said that,
I can't, because there was a point in time when I was younger where it was like, I would often drop going outdoors or going and doing these really, really, in my opinion, like spiritually enlightening experiences because I wasn't able to double up a lift with it. And it's like, this is so ridiculous and unsustainable. It's unreal. Like no joke. Like I would be at the point where I felt like, if I'm going to go ride or go run or go hike later today, I need to get up early this morning and lift on top of that. And it's like, no, you got to be able to pivot.
When it comes to your online program, I just want to plug it a little bit. So talk to me about what's your website, and then like, how does this online training work for like a 30,000 foot view? If somebody wanted to kind of get, into your program, or they even wanted to look at it or look at clients at what results have they had from engaging with it? What is your current, plan, and again the website, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So my website is http://aware.training.
Okay.
So I decided to not do a .com. You can actually do a whatever service you provide. So it's aware.training. So it's a full service 12 month long curriculum, whether you're wanting to get help with your nutrition. So I do full service nutrition counseling or exercise programming. Let's primarily with the nutrition counseling, that's the most in-depth portion of my platform, and that it's a client-centered approach to where I want to work with you for an entire year to get to know your life, all the ups and downs. And how I facilitate that is it's a habit-based coaching dynamic where we're focusing on making subtle shifts to your existing habits that you already have. A lot of the stuff I'm coaching people through isn't rocket science. It's not this like, I've never heard of this. It's a lot of stuff that people know that they need to do, but it's a matter of coaching it and framing it in such a way that integrates it in a sustainable fashion. So how I do it is I actually just have my clients every 2 weeks focus on one habit at a time every 2 weeks. And it's cumulative in that we will kind of add to that. So we start with easier habits for the first, I tell my clients, I coach them on how to eat first before I even coach them on what to eat.
Okay.
So the client-centered approach is like, no joke, like if you're eating junk food or you're eating not as well as you would prefer eating, like I'm not really going to shift that as far as what you're eating for the first month and a half or 2 months. I'm going to coach you on how to more mindfully eat that, which more often than not is going to lead towards that individual eating a little bit less because they're mindful of what they're eating. They're eliminating distractions like being on the phone or watching TV or stuff like that, and they're focusing on the actual act of eating.
Sure.
And then as time goes on, because regardless of whether or not you're eating junk food or you're eating the healthiest meal on the planet, you still need to moderate how much of that you're eating.
Right. I mean, and that's what the basis of losing weight is. Like so many people will look at these crazy ass plans, drink juice for 2 days and all this other, and it's like, you don't have to do that. Like, I mean, and I guess I'm asking as well, but would I be correct in saying that the myth of weight loss is easily debunked by this simple, calorie deficit is the only way to lose weight, because I mean, you can't eat more than you burn and then expect weight to come off, because it's just human anatomy, right?
Exactly.
I mean, at its core.
Yeah. To a very basic degree, I think that's fair. That's a fair assessment. Yes. For the most part, it is a pretty easy addition subtraction formula. Like you want to be expending more energy, calorically speaking, than you would be consuming. So yeah, you want to be eating fewer calories than you're actually putting out.
Sure. And I'm sure that's your bread and butter for clients that come to you, is that they want to look, because it's the aesthetic value. They want to look slimmer. They want to look better, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure.
Absolutely. But what I tune them into is, sure, like we have these measurable metrics rather, of their weight, their body fat, their circumference measurements, and all that kind of stuff. Those are very valid and very important barometers of progress. I'm also coaching them on the deeper, I would say, I call them the intangible elements of what's going on. So sure, you have tangible elements of how your clothes are fitting, all that kind of stuff, but I want to tune them into how they're performing.
How you feel, right?
Yeah. Like I've had clients come to me that maybe haven't experienced a ton of weight loss yet, but they've also noticed they recover from getting sick quicker. They're able to sleep better.
Sure.
They're able to fall asleep easier.
Right.
All these, they recover from injury quicker, all this kind of stuff. And it's my job to validate that, to let them know, keep paying attention to that.
Right.
Because we need to continue to hold on to, I kind of call it, we need to continue to hold on to as many positive points of progress as possible to keep us moving forward.
Sure.
Because if we focus on just, I haven't lost the weight, or I'm not down in body fat percentage, people are going to quit.
Right. They get demotivated.
Quickly. Yeah. Right. So it's like, hold on. I understand we haven't lost the weight, but what other awesome things have happened during the last 4 weeks?
I'm sure with like parents and stuff, like with me, running really helps me with my energy, and I've got 3 kids, and it's, even if I do 10 miles in the morning, like that's a crazy long run for like a Sunday for me.
Right.
When I come back home, I'm surprised that over the years of me doing it, now I feel like my energy spikes. Whereas if I don't take that run, then I feel really lethargic, and it's an odd sensation. I wouldn't say really lethargic, but it's just, you can tell a dip in the energy.
Oh yeah.
And I use it as a prescription for myself. If I want to be that dad that I idealize in my mind or whatever, or I want to become, then I think I need that energy, because I've essentially got to give my 100% to 3 different kids. You know what I mean? And 3 different age levels, and there's just different. And to be there, like at one point, 2011, I couldn't sit up straight out of my bed, and I was like 30 pounds heavier.
Okay.
And I was really pissed off, because all I wanted to do was smoke a cigarette. It would just stress me out, and I'm like, how are all these other guys doing it that I see on TV, and these ripped guys, and I just didn't have the energy. And now I laugh, because I'm doing 5 times the amount of work, even on a weekend. I'm up at like 7 a.m. like, shit, I can go for a run, but I feel just like a furnace. Like I'm ready to go all day, and that's my biggest selling point to a lot of people. They're like, well, what is it that gets you going? It's like, it's nothing tangible almost, right? It's almost those intangible things, like you're saying, like it's really just the things that are little that pick up. And I had a lot of falling down before I got to where I am now. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of your clients do.
Right.
But when I would fall down, I would notice that just kind of going back into those steps at work, looking at the positives, like you said, really seemed to benefit me, because then I was like, well, fuck, I think me running is what made me feel good yesterday, but today I wonder, if I do it again, maybe I'll have a pick me up, Sometimes it backfires. Sometimes I'll run at like 9 o'clock at night on a nice hot summer day, and then I'm up till like 1 in the morning because my metabolism turned on, Yeah. But that's huge. Okay, so this is really framing, your training all together. I mean, do you work with any vendors or any kind of gyms in particular? Like, is there? Because like I was telling you, I'd gotten this new Garmin watch, and I'm working off of heart rate training.
Sure.
I know places like Orange Theory do shit like that.
Right.
How often is something like that, like getting into the weeds with things like that? Is that something that you go right out of the gate with? Like, maybe you've gotten Joe Schmo over his first month of your training, and now he's wanting to like get into like, hey, I want to do this half marathon. Do you start looking at stuff like heart rate, or what do you use as a marker to gauge somebody's athleticism?
More often than not. So it's a matter of what kind of niche and what kind of demographic each coach is wanting to work with. So like, obviously a small proponent of my coaching demographic, I do have a few individuals that, we do get super specific and super detailed. I'm obviously well-versed in coaching them through that, but those are actually few and far between.
Okay.
The majority of the clients that I prefer working with are middle-aged young professionals that have just had a family or on the brink of having a family that just want, I call it bring sexy back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they want, I'd say anywhere between 35, 45 years old that are wanting to integrate a better balance of their exercise and their eating with everything that's going on. Obviously, I have clients that are much older than that and younger than that, but that seems to be my niche, where it's like, I just want to be able to coach people through sustainable means of integrating movement and healthy eating choices.
Sure. So it's client by client basis, it sounds like.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
So it's based on the client, but through like my online platform, I don't necessarily delve that deeply unless, again, like it's a client by client basis. Sure. But I phase in and phase out different programs every month and a half, 2 months at a time. But I'm starting them small with rudimentary movements because I'm not working with them in person, and I want to make sure they're doing things safely, and we can correlate with one another. And if they run into a hiccup, they can contact me and we talk on the phone or Skype or whatever it is. And then as time goes on, much like the nutrition counseling platform, we start with basic rudimentary movements and then build towards more complex movements as time goes on.
Form is huge. Sure. Yeah. Cause I have a lot of people that try to work with me now. And it's not at all the level that yours is, but I'll have like a friend that comes with me to the gym, or they're like, hey, I want to improve X, Y, Z, and I'm like, well, this works for me.
Right.
And I've gone through trial and error to where I've hurt my back trying to do an all day back day of stuff I've seen on YouTube.
Right.
And then I've gotten with the big guy at the gym and been like, dude, run me through your back day. Cause you're here every day and you're a monster, and going through it with him, it's just, it was the most simple things that blew my mind. Like form, like keep your back straight, fully pull down and holds XYZ motion, and stuff like that. And do you, when you do these online stuff, do you have these guys film themselves or anything like that?
So I provide the video material for them.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
What makes the exercise component really unique and so applicable towards what I call the fluidity of life is I give them actually 4 different options as to how they want to engage in movement that day. So rather than it being just a strict gym-based workout, that's one of the 4 options I actually give them. So I've done a lot of work in the back end in providing a full-bodied variety of ways to move. So I give them an option of a full gym-based workout. Most clients prefer to work out at a gym, so I give them a full gym-based workout. The other option is if they're in a pinch for time, I give them an abbreviated option, around 30 to 45 minutes of that gym-based workout. The third is more of an at-home, at the hotel, minimal equipment workout.
A lot of body weight kind of stuff.
Yeah,
sure.
Because it's a matter of framing this within the context of life. People are going to travel and they may not be able to find a gym.
Right.
So I need to arm them with information that still puts them in the driver's seat of like, okay, I've traveled. This isn't the end of the world. I'll do the home workout instead of feeling like, oh, he only gave me a gym-based workout. I can't move today.
Right.
And then the fourth is a more do-it-yourself option. So we were talking about it earlier. In the event that they go ride their bikes, they go run with family, they go hike, et cetera, and they want to do that in place of the gym workout, by all means, do that. And then I give them a text box to provide details of everything that they had done that day.
That's awesome.
For the first 3 options, the full gym workout, the abbreviated, and the home-based workout, I give them video material showing them how to do every single movement I prescribe for that workout, as well as recommended modifications. So each movement, you ultimately have 3 options as to how you want to do that movement. You have the middle ground movement that's kind of moderate, a progressed version that's much more difficult, and then a regressed version. So you have 3 different options as to how you do that movement. That way you can kind of gauge, oh, this variation of a chest press is too hard, so I'm going to do the easier one or the harder one, etc. And a video for each one showing them how to do that properly.
And I'm telling you guys, my listeners out there, you have no idea how big this is for a guy like me that goes to the gym constantly, but I fall into a rut where I'm doing the same shit over and over, and my chest day, my bis, tris day, my shoulder, they become the same function over and over. And to have somebody like you come in here and be like, dude, you can additionally do these options for those days, and or when you're injured, and or when you're tired or pinched for time. That is, to me, that's one of the biggest values that a personal trainer brings to the table, is somebody that can help me continue this thing. Because for me, that's I'm a recreational fitness person, so it helps me to not, like, on those days where I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I can just lay here today on the couch, or whatever. Those days when I'm like, I want to try that new thing, or I'll notice that I have, a little spike in maybe my pump or my size or whatever from doing something. And, through monotony, you eventually start to like things like that, and learning correctly is huge, because you do something again from YouTube and, you fuck your back up. I've done it, I don't know how many times. I have a thing with my back days. I guess I just see that's where we may have to connect.
Right. But yeah, so it ties into, I think, in a little bit more of a roundabout way, it ties into us talking earlier about the whole accountability piece. So like what I've done is I've put things together in such a way that it forces the client to be accountable kind of without them knowing it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So like we all have these common pitfalls or hurdles that we run into that are easy for people to say, well, you wrote up, because this is what I would run into. Like I like to say, whenever people were working with me, about 2 years ago, they were working with me through what I like to call the digital equivalent of my garage. They weren't working with me in person, but through my online platform, I was putting together old school spreadsheets of exercises and recipes and all this kind of stuff. Right, exactly. And what ended up happening is, I put together a gym-based workout, but that was only suitable for whenever they were at home.
Sure.
And they were in their routine.
Right.
But when time came for them to travel,
all out the window.
Yeah. Everybody says, screw it, I'm not going to do anything. So I've put things together in such a way to where it kind of, in a subtle way, it pins my client in a corner to be like, okay, I've done all the work for you.
Right.
Like you have a workout meant for not being in a gym.
Now they just got excuses. Is all.
Right. So, but that's kind of like an inadvertent means of accountability where it's like, okay, I've done all the work. Like,
right.
But it's a matter of also coaching them through that continuum of like, hey, you're traveling, but you're used to every time you travel to going back to 0 miles an hour where you eat whatever you want and you don't exercise at all.
Because coach can't see me. Coach can't see me.
Right. This is where I coach them through. This is where we get you to 50 miles an hour.
Got you.
And 50 miles an hour is doing the home workout or doing the condensed version of my workout.
I love it, man. I love the philosophy you have on fitness.
Cool.
It's very very well thought, but it's also very simple. It doesn't sound to me like you're trying to run with an Atkins diet or a carnivore diet or a what's the other one? What's the paleo diet?
Paleo, keto.
Yeah, all this crazy shit.
Sure.
So I'm not, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I feel like we can kind of touch on these things. So when it comes to diet nutrition, what is one of the, let's say your top 5, get this shit out of your diet, you would love to just see as a whole, like, I'm sure in, your graduated group of friends, let's say 20 people or even clients past, present, what is the top 5 things that you would, if you were to work with them and, or you were to give them your best advice when it came to nutrition, what are the things that you see trending that a lot of people, and I'm using the term loosely, like millennials, a lot of young cats that are out, active, but also have active nightlives. What do they fuck with a lot? Like I'm always just telling people get rid of the sugar, which is a lot of people's soda, and then fried foods.
Right.
And that's like my 2 go-tos for like 50,000 foot view, like nutrition advice. What is some big offenders for you?
And it's really interesting that you bring this up because and I'm not knocking you because this is why I like talking about stuff like this. Like your definition of in the weeds is a much different definition for me.
Okay.
Because to be honest with you, I could give a shit. I could care less, or I don't think I could care less about the sugar. You know what I mean? Like, so what I'm looking at is I'm looking at one's environment, like what's influencing those decisions.
Sure.
So, what I come up with off the top of my head is like, what decisions is each individual making in their day-to-day life that's influencing consumption of sugar or consumption of fried food. So like I look at, I always want to look at how people are consuming food first.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like, instead of it's very easy. Like it's been done over and over again. Like don't eat sugar.
Right.
Like, don't eat this. But most people's habits aren't changing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, I've got to be cool with that and acknowledge, okay, maybe I need to reframe things instead of coming in and telling them you need to change this habit right now.
That's interesting.
And
okay.
trying to change it within a different context. So I like to use the phrase, it's very widely used within the fitness industry of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
But my mindset is, but you can make it really thirsty.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I have to entice the client in a roundabout way, in such a way that prompts them to make that decision on their own. Okay, I'm going to change how much of this I'm eating. So like the big things I notice is, one of the main things I've paid attention to for the last 4 to 5 years that influence 95% of my decision making, whether it's how I spend my time, what food I eat, how I eat the food, etc. It's something I take from someone I look up to and a buddy of mine I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh yeah.
audit your friend group.
I love it. I love it, man. That's huge. I say that all the time.
That's a huge phrase of depending on where you're wanting to be. And again, we're looking at things through the lens of that continuum. How far to the nth degree or what, other end of the spectrum you want to be with your health, look at who you're surrounding yourself with.
That's huge, man.
Surrounding yourself with people that are, if you were to share with them, hey, I'm trying to improve my health and I need your support. I view every client I work with as a boxer. They're in their corner. Round one is over. Who are they going to the corner to get information from, inspiration from, support from?
Sure.
Look at who's in your corner.
Because you were essentially as good as your 5
Yeah, you're the average
friends.
of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's
huge.
Very important.
Yeah,
when it comes to, I don't expect every single person I worked with to have ironclad willpower.
Right.
So,
it's not going to happen.
But you know what I mean? It's just not reasonable to think that they're going to be able to do it all themselves. So looking at who you're leaning to, like, are you leaning on a friend that just tells you, oh, you worked out super hard today. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, let's go eat this.
It's donut time,
Make
son.
a note of that.
Yeah.
Like, depending on where you're wanting to go, like, you might have to adjust whether or not you continue to spend more time with that person.
Well, what about something as easy to point a finger at, like alcohol? Do you feel like a lot of people that may not have a fitness journey in mind, or they haven't maybe started it correctly? Do you feel like alcohol is one of the bigger offenders for people's detracting from their health, from their health journey?
Sure. That's a very common one but it's really interesting to see how that evolves based on age demographics. Obviously, like we're still in the 20 to 30 age range. That's still, I noticed that it's a little bit different in that, the culture behind it is much different to where people might be consuming in a much different environment as opposed to, like I have older clients that they're still consuming alcohol just within a different context. So they've had a long day at work and they're coming home and drinking 2 to 3 glasses of wine every night. That's contributing to their stagnation and their progress, as opposed to you have, millennials or kids, individuals of our generation that are still consuming alcohol, but they're doing it as a means of their going out.
It's social.
Right. It's very social. And not to say that there's not overlap between age demographics,
Absolutely.
But yeah, alcohol can definitely contribute to it. And I'm not the thing is I'm not a fan of alcohol. Like, if people want to drink alcohol,
right.
But it's a matter of how are you going to moderate that experience, and where are you going to put yourself on that continuum of like, okay, I know when to stop, or I have people in my corner that can let me know, you know what, Pat, I don't think we need to drink tonight. I don't think we need to do this, all that kind of stuff.
How's that going to hit that goal, dude?
Right, exactly. Or do you have friends in your corner that are just like, they view your shift in your health and the improvement of your eating and your exercise, do they view that as a threat?
Right.
And if they
it's
view
an ego
that
thing.
Right. If they view, because it threatens their identity.
Right.
And it like inadvertently polices their identity. So it's a matter of, if you've got people that are struggling with that, I would just make a note of it.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut them out completely, but I would just be cognizant of that.
Right.
Because if they're trying to get you to conform to what they're doing, which is what you're trying to get out of.
Sure.
You need to take a hard look at how that's going to play out in the long term for you.
Right. And I hear a lot of that conversation on two sides of it. Like, you get like the Joe Rogan types. I listen to a lot of podcasts apparently, right? Right.
But
like the Joe Rogan types, where he'll talk about how, there's friends of his that will party hard and they're doing hard drugs, because they have money and it's just what they've done, but then they look at Rogan, they're like, how are you doing that? And, and then you look at the other side, like Rich Roll, where he's talking about, having people that are his friends, but they talk shit about his complete plant-based diet. But this guy did 5 triathlons in 6 days, on different islands in Hawaii consecutively. One of the few people that's ever done something like that, all off a plant-based diet.
Sure.
But he gets shit from people that are, even at his elite level, his closer friends, and they're like, "What, you're gonna kill yourself? You're gonna blah blah blah." And getting shit like that, I think is good in some contexts, because there's times when you just need to be taught. Hey, you probably shouldn't be, I don't know, whatever, taking a human growth hormone or whatever, but in the same breath, there's people that, they're going to tear you down because you're not drinking with them. And it's like, dog, come on, man. Like, I want to hang out with you, but we can't keep doing this every time we hang out.
Well, you have to assess how long you want to be put through that.
Yeah.
Because there is a level, I don't want to go on too deep of a tangent, but there's a psychological, test that was run quite a while ago that I always think about when it comes to individuals assessing, what, I have these core root of habits that I really like that are beneficial to me, but who I'm involved with in my group, my sphere of influence, is a threat to them, is it was called the learned helplessness study.
Interesting.
And if I remember correctly, Don't quote me directly on it, but I believe they did the test on dogs where they got a handful of dogs, and I believe they had set them up with like shock collars. Okay. And they created this completely invisible parameter where this group of dogs would hang out in. And anytime the dog, it's like an invisible fence. So like anytime the dog would come close to that invisible fence, they'd get shocked, prompting them not to cross. But if the dog were to just go through that brief bit of discomfort and get across there and get shocked a little bit, they would no longer get shocked ever again.
Interesting.
So what ended up happening, if memory serves me correctly, I would have to look through the study again, but if I remember correctly, what they would do with some of these dogs is they would create the invisible fence, the invisible parameter, and then as time goes on, they would shorten it, and they'd shorten it, and they'd shorten it. They'd make it smaller and smaller to the point to where the dog would become complacent, just getting shocked in one spot, not even moving. So I think that's a pretty good parallel to human behavior, to where it's like, you know what lies on the other side of your life when it comes to, because it is like when people are adjusting their lifestyle habits for that of the better, it's a threat to multiple, it's a strain, not necessarily a threat. It's a strain to multiple relationships, your friendships, your relationship with your loved one. Yeah. It's going to test those infrastructural dynamics that had been laid in place with your friend or your loved one, etc.
Since the beginning.
And it's going to be strained.
Sure.
So it's a matter of whether or not you're willing to continue pushing in that direction and hope that those that are around you are going to support it. But if they're not going to support it,
get out of here.
But you have to make that decision.
Sure.
You know what
or
I
the
mean?
balance of.
Right. Yeah. Right. Some people will just say, you know what, I don't want to deal with that identity shift with my friend group, or have to shed an old friend group for a new one because I'm growing in a positive direction. Sure. You know what I mean? So I feel a huge thing is influenced and supported by one's environment. By all means, the group of friends that you continue to spend time with, are they supportive of those habits? And if they're not, I would just say take inventory, and then you have to do a self-assessment as to how far do you want to push it?
Right. Are you okay to be to kind of go back to that lifestyle that you were
that got you to where you're at right now? That got you to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm sick of this. I want to do something else. You know
that fucking Bob. I ain't going to the bar no more with Bob. He got me too drunk.
Right.
Couldn't run.
The other point, I know I wasn't able. We haven't elaborated on 5, but the other point that I really think of, it's more of a mindfulness technique, is eliminating distractions while you're eating.
That's interesting.
We live in a very fast-paced culture. I still make the mistake from time to time where literally we're eating our food and we're looking at our phone at the same time.
So why is that? What's the problem with that?
More often than not, you're distracted. You're not tuned in with what you're eating. More often than not, whenever you're going through distracted eating, whether you're watching TV, you're on your computer, on your phone, people have a tendency to end up consuming more through distracted eating than if they were to slow down and have their phone nowhere in sight.
So is this probably like something to do with dopamine, like your feel good or your sympathetic?
I feel like it more so has to do with just the basic physiology of eating. So it takes typically 15 to 20 minutes for anything that you've consumed from your mouth to make it to your stomach.
Right.
Okay. At that point, once that 15 to 20 minute span has passed, more often than not, you're rather satiated, and then your stomach is able to send a signal to your brain letting you know, hey, I've consumed enough.
Full.
If we're distracting ourselves and I'm on my phone eating, I'm usually eating at a faster pace.
Okay.
So what that ends up alluding to is I finish my meal in a much shorter period of time, which then prompts me. So say it took me 5 minutes to eat that meal.
Right.
I've got about 10 to 15 minutes before I actually know whether or not I'm full.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like that distraction has prompted me to consume much quicker than maybe I need to, which then is going to prompt me to maybe go for seconds.
Right. Or go for dessert.
Exactly.
Which may not have been the plan for the day.
Right. Right. And on top of that, you're missing out on the experience of eating.
Wow.
Like you are, because you're looking at, I like to use the hot date analogy. Like myself and my girlfriend try to do a good job of not having our phones out when we're out on a date.
Right, right.
I need to pay attention to you.
Sure,
you know what I mean.
I think that's a huge problem with a lot of people.
It translates over to multiple dimensions of life. Like I'm with you right now.
Yeah,
I'm not sitting here on my phone looking at my phone while I'm talking to you on this podcast.
Here.
I'm looking at you in the eye.
Yeah,
it's very important. It's paramount. That's no different than with what you're eating.
Right.
So
Okay.
what you'd
That's
come to
fucking
find
interesting.
by putting your phone, like, no joke, I'll sit right here and I'll start eating and I'll slide my phone to the other side of the table. It's like, it can wait.
Right.
I need to pay attention to this thing that
Right.
it's nourishing me.
Sure.
Like, how incredible is that? Like,
Right.
why aren't we taking the time to just slow down? Like, I'm not an uber religious person, but I can definitely at least appreciate when people fucking stop what they're doing and pray over their food.
That's interesting.
Like, that is fucking cool.
Right. And especially in this day and age. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Be thankful for what you're eating.
That's huge,
Like,
man.
it's nourishing you. It's what's keeping you alive.
Yeah.
So like, tune in with that. So like, eliminating that distraction gives you that opportunity to actually, like, no joke, I went an entire life, 28 years of being distracted. Well, not necessarily 28, but like the majority of my adulthood, being distracted while I'm eating.
Yeah.
And I was eating the same food items. And whenever I took the time to put my phone away and eliminate distraction, I actually learned like what my food tasted like.
Right.
You're able to pay attention to different
Like,
notes.
why the fuck am I even eating this?
Well, or man, this tastes better than I thought it did.
Sure.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? Because you get into this autonomic eating experience where, like, okay, I'm just eating this food and I'm on my phone and I'm just shoveling it in. You're missing that experience of tasting what you're consuming.
Do you feel like that plays into preparing your own food as well?
To an extent, absolutely. But that's where I like to play into the how you're eating before I coach you on what you're eating. Like,
Okay.
I want people, because what that typically ends up doing is it prompts the individual to slow down.
Right. Okay.
Like, am I gonna want to rush through time with my significant other, or am I gonna want to rush through time with my friends?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
You want that to be slow and low.
Right.
Like, you want to take your time. You want to draw it out. You want it to be as long and as fruitful as possible. So like, what that ends up looking like within the dynamic of how you're eating, regardless of whether or not you're eating something terrible or healthy, quote unquote. Obviously,
Right.
we're working through that continuum, is taking your time, slowing down. You know, instead of eating with one hand, you're eating with two. Have a swig of water, take a bite, put your utensils down, stop and chew that.
Take your
and
time.
pay attention to
Yeah,
chewing.
yeah.
I actually run my clients through a lesson where I aim to have them put down a handful of raisins and literally stop what they're doing, to pick up a raisin, eat the raisin, and focus on just eating that raisin.
Wow.
Focus on the texture, focus on the taste, like pay attention. Like, I like to create games out of stuff. So like, put yourself in kind of like a journalistic or like a food critic standpoint, where it's like, okay, I'm going to eat this thing and I'm going to really tune into it and pay attention and log about it.
Get some real Gordon Ramsay.
Right.
And this one has 2 or 3 extra wrinkles than the last one. Fuck yeah.
Right. But I think that's also what makes like shows on the Food Network so unique, because there's an art to it. They're expanding on like the notes of the food. Like, I didn't know it until I was talking to a buddy about it, and it completely changed how I eat like cheeseburgers. He was telling me that pickles are meant to be at the bottom of a burger, because the notes of the pickle end up translating upward.
Huh.
And
that is some shit.
Obviously, I would want to do a little bit more research, but because we went out and got burgers, and I was like, why are the because I usually think, okay, pickles, onions, tomatoes, lettuce, all on the top.
Yeah,
like, that's just how it's always been. But he's like, no, pickles are meant to be on the bottom, because the flavor notes percolate upward and transcend upward.
Man.
And I started paying attention to that, and I was like, well, at least through my, I don't know if it's a placebo effect or what, but it's like, I'm tuned into that, and I'm paying attention to the flavor of the food and how that's changed and all that.
Well, and it adds to the mantra of pay attention to your food, because like you're looking at that, and you're probably more so putting the phone away even when you're eating a Blake's burger. You're not even going to think about it, until
I
you're
want to
like,
enjoy
now I
that.
want my food,
and
I want to think about where those damn pickles are.
Right. So I think just being mindful and tuning into that kind of stuff is huge. So just paying attention to, am I watching the TV while I'm eating? Am I on my phone? Am I on my laptop? And just challenging yourself for a few days to just put that aside, and maybe bringing a journal with you. And after you eat, write out what you ate.
So you're saying phone, TV, anything where you're kind of like engaging your mind so much that you're not paying attention to the action in front of you.
Yeah, because we're in this culture that like multitasking, quote unquote, is like glorified.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you're cool and you're on the right track if you're eating and you're on your phone at the same time. It's like, these are the foundational habits that I think are contributing to people's overeating and
but that could be applied to so many things to say,
absolutely.
put your phone down,
Right.
you know, like you said, on a date. I mean, food aside, that's something that a lot of
Right.
people struggle with, is to just not be distracted.
Right.
You know, and I'm not going to get all, you know, woo woo again, but I feel like that can speak to a lot of cultural issues,
Sure.
a lot of stuff that's going on where, you know, you can't really take in what your significant other is saying. And then, you know, like, this is the fourth time I brought this up. Why the fuck aren't
Right.
you paying attention?
Right.
It's like, well, I was looking at my phone while you were bitching
Right.
about me. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if
Right.
you really listen the first time, maybe, you know, you can move that relationship, the needle on that relationship
Right.
in a positive direction,
Sure.
you know, which I think is huge for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So with diet, and granted, we're, you know, we're leaping to shit here, but
Sure.
do you have an opinion on plant-based versus animal-based diets? One for like a normal guy, like a guy that's maybe, you know, doing a super basic training regimen,
Sure.
and then a guy that's trying to train.
Right.
You know, I mean, and I guess the way I had noted it here, even though it's, you know, runners, lifters, CrossFit, powerlifting,
Right.
bodybuilders, are they all going to require something different? And if so, like, what would be your recommendation
Sure.
from your, you know,
So
professional point
that's
of
an
view?
interesting question, because we live within a world that we always want a black or white answer.
Sure.
We always want this formula of okay, 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
That's not how life works.
Sure. Okay.
So I like to say that I sweep through the gray area, and a lot of people don't like it. And the reason being is because there is no definitive answer to anything.
Okay.
The only way we're going to truly know is through our own guided trial and error. So like all those athletes that you listed, it would be preposterous of me to expect all of them to be on the same diet.
Right.
Each individual is unique. But with that being said, it ultimately boils down to, like, I'm not a fan of one diet or the other. I'm a fan of the diet that works best for that individual.
But what you would attest as a base philosophy from your perspective, that you're saying omnivore rather than just vegan or just paleo or something like that.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's the thing.
So
like,
it could be
that's
the
where it becomes
individual
tough.
needs one of those.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is, because we don't know. Like you could say my diet is to an extent more omnivore in nature.
Okay.
I've started eating far more plants, far more fruits and vegetables than I ever have in the past 25 years of my life.
Interesting.
But I don't see myself ever giving up meat.
Right.
You know
okay.
what I mean? But the quantity of the meat I consume has definitely shifted. But I didn't learn that through someone coming to me and being like, eat, like, you need to be a vegan,
right,
or you need to be vegetarian.
Right.
Like, it's been through my own guided trial and error. So like, like from a coach's standpoint, you know, I will have people and I will have clients that want to go on keto and they'll want to do paleo, and I don't tell them not to do that.
Right. And just for you guys listening, keto is essentially trying to get your body to go into a ketogenic state where you're essentially thriving off of fat inside of your body, and more so your brain, right?
Fat is your main fuel.
Right. Which I think flies in the face of what a vegan would say when they would say, oh my God, fat from animals. What do you mean? You know, you need to be eating plant-based,
right?
You know, and then the keto guys are like, well, where are you getting your protein from? You know, and that was kind of what I was, so you're saying that if a gentleman wanted to try keto, you would have them try it.
Try it.
Okay.
Be mindful of it.
Sure.
So this is where we go into the how of everything. So like, try it. Life is an experiment. Like, I view our health and our lives as a science experiment. So rather than me coming at you and condemning you and trying to make you feel bad because ultimately it's rooted in somebody wants to get healthy.
Right.
Okay.
Want to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
So why should I not be a fan of that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though it may or may not be something I do or I prefer or I think works. No. I'm going to come in through more of a compassionate lens, because more often than not, people are expecting, okay, no joke, I've had people come at me and start working with me and want to start like a juice detox or a tea detox.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Something they've read about or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
And something, you know, things that I'm not a big fan of, but you know what? It doesn't do me much good for me to tell them that is the dumbest thing.
Well,
he's just
never tried it. He's just never tried it.
Right. But it makes them feel bad.
Okay.
It makes them feel, because they're doing their own investigative work. They're trying to find, like, it's rooted and they just want to be healthier. So like why should I come in and make them feel like shit?
Right.
Because they want to be healthier.
Huh.
You know what I mean? So like, I need to validate that research and that journey.
Yeah.
And let them know, you know what? Let's try it. I'm going to guide you. If you're willing, I'm going to guide you through let's be more mindful of it. Maybe they do, because most people who are doing the diets have done diets in the past and they've failed.
Right.
It's
Because it's a goddamn
times.
diet. I hate that
Right.
word.
But my thing is, how can we coach them through that in a fashion that's a little bit more mindful?
Sure.
Okay. So coach them through, they do the keto or they do the paleo diet or whatever it is. And okay, say they're not able to sustain it and they fall flat on their face and they end up binging on food or whatever. I want to go to the drawing board with them on that and look at, what did you really like?
Yeah.
What shift did you like in this diet? What did you not like?
So that speaks back to
stuff.
your whole philosophy, which I'm starting to see more clearly. And I'm not looking for black and white answers,
Sure.
but
I'm saying culturally speaking, that's what everybody's looking for.
Yeah,
they want a definitive, this is the gold standard. And that's just not.
Right. But from a personal trainer standpoint, you're just trying to create balance in their diet
Absolutely.
And one way or the other. Do you, because I realize that this is what you do, I know that you're not endorsing one of these directions or the other.
Right.
But when you work with top level people, do you see one of these diet types better for people than not? Like, have you had somebody that was training on a keto diet?
Not necessarily, but again, that falls in tune with my niche.
Okay,
you know what I mean. So like my niche, I like working with working class people.
Sure.
That's just my niche.
Sure.
Like
and they're not going to be top elites trying to break records
so like
and shit.
I break things down as I have you have different levels of eaters. You have level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is like, I am new to everything. I have no idea like what's good from bad.
Teach me.
Exactly.
Sure.
Like very fresh, clean slate. Level 2 are individuals that have things pretty well maintained and integrated. They know how to pivot and adjust and make the adjustments they need to maintain the health that they have, as well as improve it. And then level 3 are more high caliber athletes. But it's also looking at, it's very few and far between that I work with level 3 clients, but more often than not, in the event that I'm working with a level 3 client, the environment is much different. It's a much more controlled. There's some similarities between like what I went through with bodybuilding and what they would be going through. It's very, very controlled scenario. They're eating very specific foods based on their goals.
Right.
You have people that are to such a far end of the extreme, the spectrum where they're not even prepping their own food. They're having people prep for them.
Wow. You know what I saw? Was it through you? Do you know of the guys that are doing the delivery prep service? Have you seen that?
But I know there's a handful around town. And
yeah, I thought that was the most unique thing. I was like, man, I don't know. I feel like a couple hours and you could save a lot of money at home. But
sure.
And not to take away from those guys in the least. I mean, like you said, sometimes that's that little additional that you need in order to stay on track.
Right.
Especially when you're starting out in your wellness journey. But a guy like me, I almost feel, because of how much I run and how much I bike. Like if I'm not running today, I'm biking, and if I'm vice versa,
right.
my metabolism is at a point where I can almost eat anything, and it's not affecting my weight.
Right.
But the dirtier I eat, the less energy I have,
absolutely.
and the sorer I am the next day. And I notice the more plants I put in my body, the less sore I am, and that could go into again the weeds with branched chain amino acids on that stuff.
Sure.
And there's a lot of I listen to tons. Joe Rogan has done I don't know how many podcasts on the different types of diets.
Sure.
Rich Roll the same way, and these guys have been on two, I feel like, extremes of the spectrum as to what they were into and what they deal with.
Right.
And I feel, like you said, balance is key. And I have yet to have something that works so much better for me than the other. Like I tried to, when I first had started to get into fitness, I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It was a TV show on Netflix.
Right.
And the guy was just all about juice. And
Sure.
then I read Christopher McDougall's book on Born to Run. And it was chia seeds.
Right.
And this is when the toe shoe craze was coming along.
Right.
So I did 4 years and a bunch of half marathons in toe shoes, and I tried to run a marathon and I fucked myself up.
Right.
And in the same breath, I tried to do chia seeds and juice for 2 months, and I lost weight, but I would shake every day because I didn't have enough balance. I was just not eating. I was like, no meats, no, this will get my belly away, even though I wasn't as far gone as a lot of these guys I was seeing on TV.
Sure.
So seeing balance, I think, is huge. And it's cool that you are not giving me a straight answer like, yeah, fuck yeah, keto, or yeah, vegan,
Right.
because this is good. Because a lot of people, I'm sure, they feel like, they hear these little discussions and there's some guy they follow, some guru, social media is the name of the game now. And that guy's like, well, you got to do this. And well, that brings me to another point. What is your opinion on supplements, on powders? I mean, a lot of people, I think, use that. I had a buddy of mine that hit me up recently that he's starting to get back into fitness real strong, and he does martial arts anyways. Mm-hmm. But he's just trying to break off, just the very beginning of let's get cardio going. Let's get a few things going. Right. And he's trying to recover from the gym. And I told him, well, grab a box of BCAAs. You won't be as sore. Plants are better, but let's go with this as a supplement, but then he had found a protein, thing that had all these things that it stated, on it that this is going to do this shit for you. Right. How do you feel about people, A, using supplements, and B, misusing supplements?
Sure. I will just begin by saying and letting everybody know that the supplement industry is not heavily regulated by the FDA.
Right.
So, with that being said, obviously I'm not a big proponent, because this is where things get really confusing, I think, for the consumer, because you have professionals or pseudo professionals in the industry that are touting a weight loss program, but it's all contingent upon buying a supplement.
Right.
And I'm not a fan about that.
Sure.
I'm not a fan of that. Whether, you get a discount code on a supplement or a protein powder, I'm not a big proponent of them. Obviously they have their place. But what the supplement industry has done a very good job of is making it seem, if you're going to get on a health journey or on a health kick, that in order for you to feel like your journey is valid, that you've got to buy all these supplements. And
you would say that that's bullshit, right?
Oh yeah.
God damn absolutely. It. I love to hear it, Pat. I want you guys to please rewind and play that again, please.
But I say that because I lived it. When I was doing bodybuilding, I was spending $300, $500 a month on shit that I did not need.
I tried gainers for 3 months and I've never had so much acne or grease on my face, dude. Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's also fair to go through and do the research. My girlfriend and I just went through, wasn't it examine.com? What was but there, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to find them and send them to you, but there are third-party companies and websites that you can go to research the efficacy and the cleanliness of and the efficiency of the supplements that you'd be purchasing. So
these guys are bullshit or not.
Right. Well, as well as are there heavy metals and all sorts of terrible things in your protein powder.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because how the supplement industry works here in America, which is not efficient, is they put something on the shelves, and if it doesn't kill people, they end up kind of keeping it on the shelves. Right. But if it ends up hurting someone, then they go back and they need to reformat. Like
creatine or whatever, because that had a moment where it was banned, right?
Well, I think part of the problem, I don't remember the specific instance, but I think part of the problem with creatine is it's synonymous with pre-workout. Most people, if they were just to consume creatine monohydrate as it is, that only, they wouldn't have a problem. What ends up happening is you have pre-workouts that have creatine, caffeine,
taurine,
all of this stuff.
Sure, that
it's
crazy
a cocktail
stuff
of all these stimulants. It's you're just getting high. You're getting high before you work out, and then you think, oh, it's the creatine. No, it's all the other crap that they've thrown in it.
Right.
That's where it becomes a little bit of a problem. But yeah, I learned through my own experience, my own trial and error, to where it's I bought protein supplements. I bought protein bars, amino acid pills, creatine powders, pre-workout powders, all this nitric oxide boosters, all this kind of stuff, to where it's again, through my experience, it was just it made me think, is this really adding days to my life?
Right.
No. It's
right.
not.
Is this making me faster? Is it making
exactly.
me? I know with creatine, when I do take it, and if I do take creatine monohydrate, do I have it right?
Sure.
I notice that I can say, maybe it's placebo, but just what they had said in magazines and stuff that I've read, that I do get more out of my workout in terms of grabbing 3 or 4 extra reps on a set, something like that. Right. And maybe it's placebo again, but I feel like I can get there. But if I take a pre-workout, I feel like I drank 2 Monsters, energy drinks.
It's pretty wild.
And that shit makes me just and you just want to throw the weights, fuck working out.
Right.
What do you? Yes, ma'am. What do you get? She's raising her hand over there.
Yeah, Clean Label Project.
Clean Label Project. Okay.
Yeah, because we even
thank you.
We even looked up, because I and it's all circumstantial because I'm a big proponent of if you can have your post-workout meal be an actual meal, do that.
Do that. Right. Okay. That's huge.
So much more of a beautiful, fun. And I'm talking about the being in tune. I want to experience what I'm eating. I don't have as much fun drinking a protein shake as I do eating a meal.
Right. You're not as satiated.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just not a full-bodied experience. But there are circumstances that lend myself to where it's okay, I'm in a pinch. I need to consume something. Again, we're working on that continuum. instead of me eating junk food, I can still work a little bit better and maybe have a banana and a protein shake, and that be good. But also, we're working within a continuum of better protein options and less preferable protein options. And we came to find that the one that I've been, no joke, that I've been consuming for years is trash. Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Went and looked it up. You're like, oh,
yeah. It's like, okay, I might need to do some more research to find, because I don't drink protein every day, but yes, not all of them are good for you. Do your research, take your time.
Well, and I've noticed, like, with myself, as I run, if I run too much, my wife will get mad at me. She's like, you're getting too fucking skinny. Like, what's wrong with you? You know, like, I'm living at like 182 here. And just because of where I work, I hit a scale every day, you know, and I track it. And I noticed that I can dip 4 or 5 pounds in a day, depending on how much I run, how much I bike, you know, which I think is water weight. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. But I've been all the way up to 200 pounds. But then in the same breath, when I was trying to go all plant-based, and I feel like I was just doing it incorrectly or not as wholesomely as I could have. I was getting down to like 170, you know, and on my frame, like, I just look like nothing, you know. I was fast, I felt good, but it was just like, I look sickly, you know what I mean? And I didn't like that. So I could see where protein has its place for me, because in a lot of cases I lift on the days that I'm on the bike, because I bike it at a gym. So on the days that I'm doing like some crazy lifting thing, and then I hit the bike, like, I'm so burnt and I've toasted so many calories. If I don't get food right off the bat, I'm going to grab some, you know, what is that? Muscle milk? Is that one of the ones, you know, easy consumer thing you can grab from the gas station, low sugar, the whole bit. I don't even know if that's good for me. Now that you guys said that, I don't have to go look it up, but
yeah, it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Or chocolate milk, you know, just something that I feel like is more of it's just to get me to my good meal, you know, like, hey, I'm going to go home and cook, but I'm fucking hungry right now.
I need something to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. So that's huge. So protein and supplements. Do you have an opinion on nootropics? Are you savvy on nootropics at all? Like brain pills? Like,
I haven't
like
really. I'm not totally familiar at this point.
He's like, mushrooms are about. No, I'm just. It's as far as I go. No. So that was one of the big things I wanted to ask you about, was the supplements, and then I know I had another thing that I had written down about food. I didn't want to get off the food thing all the way. But I feel like, so that last one, and this is probably one of the higher up ones that you would not deal with probably 99% of the time. But how do you feel about stuff like human growth hormone and testosterone being injected and stuff like that? Like, what's your opinion on that kind of stuff?
That's a very, like, obviously I don't coach clients through that. I'm not a proponent of mentoring them through that. Obviously, I'm looking at that through the lens of my experience. Like, my roots in exercise and healthy lifestyle are rooted in bodybuilding culture, where that was pretty much the norm. Obviously, I did it naturally. There are organizations that aren't that strict, where you can do as much as you want and it's not a problem.
They don't test you, essentially.
No. So I guess I would say to each its own. It is very interesting to where, although I'm not a fan of it, I will never go that path of steroids or anything of that sort. It's just not for me. One thing where I think things get a little bit confusing is, you know, you have an individual who's really big, and they might be using steroids or testosterone, growth hormone, what have you. And for some reason that completely like negates any of the hard work that they put in. I find that to be a very common means of dialogue with individuals as soon as they find out that they're on steroids or growth hormone, that
that's why.
Right. But it's like, that's their gig. Like, if that's what they're wanting to do, do you, man. Like, do your thing, as long as you're not pushing it on others, all that kind of stuff. If that's your thing, I say more power to you. So I'm just not a fan of the conversation that, you know, somehow, like, they still have to put in the work to get as strong and as big as they are and all that kind of stuff. But
they're seeking an edge, which typically isn't socially accepted.
Well, it depends on it. I think it depends on the sport. Like, obviously, if you're having it within professional sports, NFL, NHL, MLB, all that kind of stuff, I'm not a fan of it.
Right, that's shady. Yeah, right. But like with powerlifting, I've been, and correct me if I'm wrong, but powerlifting, I've been told that they don't give a shit, because this is to see how at the strongest you can be. let's see how you can lift whatever you want to put in your body, but you're still a human at the end of the day.
Right.
Which is, I think speaks to that, because it's like, even though you're taking those roids, you still got to get in that gym 6 days a week and lift like a monster.
You're gonna lift, right.
Right. Like Rich Piana. Did you ever see that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that guy was like, he looked ridiculous, but that guy was in the gym. Like he he lived there, you know, and as much as, you know, that I feel like that's probably what led to his early death.
Oh, sure.
You know, I think that it speaks to that kind of person. Like you said, like that's his
if that's your gig, go for it. But as far as I'm concerned, the ethos of my own health practice for myself as well as my clients, it's a very strong deviation from that, because like you look at bodybuilding culture, and like one individual I look at is Ronnie Coleman.
Okay. Yeah.
The guy can't even move.
Right.
Like he's obviously, I don't know, like he doesn't seem to regret anything that he's done.
Well,
that's his thing. But it's like, I can't relate to that.
I saw a day in his life, and you know, he starts off and it's all about food with those guys. Like they just fucking eat. That's like, besides lift, that's all they do is eat.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting because he's like, I start my day out with cardio. I was like, all right. So I'm watching him, you know, he gets on the treadmill for about a hot minute, and you know, I think it was like 3 minutes, and he just gets this like,
right.
And I was like, damn, like he was really gassed, you know? And then he gets off that treadmill, and then from there, the rest of the day is like, you know, 3 sessions of lifting, and the dude is killing it when he's lifting. But when you saw him on that treadmill, I was like, dog, I could not be like that.
No,
like,
it's not well-rounded.
Yeah. I go to the mall with my family, and I'm just going to be like this giant monster, but I'm tanked, you know, having to stop and like get a protein grass drink or something, whatever the hell, you know, he would drink like that. But yeah, that's amazing that you would, so essentially what you're saying is across the board, there's almost not a artificial edge that you can seek, which is going to contribute to wellness. This is going to be more for like, I'm trying to get this look, or I'm trying to get this weight achieved or something like that.
Right. Obviously you have instances where you have men that are low in testosterone and they need that. And that's, you know, that's facilitated by a doctor.
It's like a medical need.
I'm not a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, that's what Joe Rogan does apparently.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. I guess doctor said you have low, and then he starts to, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I think he injects every day.
Okay.
But if you look at him 10 years ago, he did not look like the Hulk smash like he looks like now.
Right.
But yeah, medically, and I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, medically speaking, that sometimes is needed.
Yeah. Like I don't have a problem with that. But if and on top of that, like if someone's wanting to live their life doing things that way, and they have every right to do what they want with their body.
I just want you guys to know his face right now is very like, this is not the subject that he wants people to try to dive into though.
No, like
and I would not be.
Like I don't coach. I'm not a big fan of coaching people through. I actually haven't coached one single client through that kind of a dynamic when it comes to substance use in that shape or form. Yeah, it's definitely not my niche.
That's huge. I love that you're such a well-rounded in terms of what you do, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because I feel like you've seen all types of folks, you know what I mean? And when it comes to elite athletes, a lot of times I think that people think that it's some place that you can't reach either unless you do something cheated, you know, which is a lot of things up to and including steroids or some shit like that. But it's completely possible. Have you seen people? I know that you trained a UFC fighter. Eventually was a UFC fighter, right?
Well, I trained, she's not necessarily a UFC fighter, but I worked with a gal who, this was prior to her fighting. I worked with her, and she just does it for fun. I don't think she's doing anything professionally.
Okay.
Within her community, she was doing, female UFC style fighting.
But you laid some groundwork there. You got to at least say that. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But that's also a matter of like acknowledging my scope of practice. Like if any individual was going to make their way, closer towards more competitive style, sport, whether it's fighting, baseball, or anything of that sort, I would need to acknowledge, okay, I've reached my threshold to where I could certainly learn more, but that's not my niche. And to be honest with you, I don't prefer coaching people specifically through those areas of competition.
Like so very specialized kind of stuff.
Yeah, at that point I would refer out.
Sure.
Like I would just refer out to individuals within my network that I know way more, but that's their thing.
Yeah.
Like where they would be coaching athletes through their training and all that kind of stuff, solely indicative to their sport. They might not know how to balance working with just a regular 40-year-old mom that's trying to take care of life with her kids and her
Right.
family.
I just want to get rid of these handles here.
Like that's where you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a matter of just acknowledging, okay, this is the scope of my practice. Like I'm not
Okay.
going to come in and tell everybody I can work with anybody. Like it'd be doing them a disservice.
Do you feel that you are the gateway drug to a lot of different paths for people,
Sure,
though?
absolutely.
Okay.
But that comes with knowing like where I'm willing to go and where I'm willing not go.
That's cool.
You know what I mean? Because like all, and I like it. That's why I like using that boxing analogy. It's like I want to synergize and collaborate with other professionals. So it's like I've recommended clients working with therapists and them working with their therapist. And if the client's is interested in me bridging the gap with their therapist to talk like, okay, I'm taking care of their wellness and their exercise and their eating to a certain extent. And then I can work with their therapist on bridging that gap instead of it being this completely individual experience. Same with like a massage therapist. I refer out to massage therapists and I work with that massage therapist in conjunction with my client and so on and so forth.
Sure. So that gets people into that. That's awesome, man. Well, I don't know if I had any more direct questions for you. I think one of the ones I just kind of wanted like an opinion, man. Like, what's your opinion on like CrossFit? Do you feel? I hear a lot of people talk about how that's almost counterproductive to longevity.
Sure.
Because of how I don't want to say the word is explosive, but maybe how rough it can be on the human body.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like things of that nature? Like, what's your opinion on?
It's
stuff
going to
like
be
that?
really interesting, but it's a microcosm for human life. Like all we are guinea pigs. Like that's all we are.
Right.
Like we try something and then later on down the line, we find out, we just learn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we learn, okay, maybe this wasn't the best way we should do things.
Right.
Like we had leaded fucking paint at one point in
Right.
time in our history.
I like
and we
that.
found out, okay, like we could paint with this, but it probably wasn't a good idea. So we
Right.
made a shift. So I don't know about CrossFit. I think only time's going to tell. Like we have these super elite athletes. I have colleagues and friends that own CrossFit gyms.
Sure.
And, I spoke with a colleague the other day and he was just so staunch on being against it and like as if like I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Being a huge proponent against it, which is fine. But I think I come to it with a similar approach that I do with eating. So like, sure, for someone who's brand new to exercise, I don't know that them jumping right into CrossFit, or even if they've gone 6 months without exercise, I would not recommend CrossFit initially.
It just looks
very
fucking
hard.
painful.
Right.
Yeah.
But like with the elite athletes that are doing it right now, I would also be interested to see as time goes on with that solid training over a longer period of time, does that have a positive effect on
Right.
their body in the aging process or
Sure.
does it not? So like you look at an extreme, that's why I always like to look to like Ronnie Coleman. He's an extreme example of like, your body's not meant to lift heavy weight.
Not like that. Right.
Not
yeah.
that often.
Yeah.
Not like that. Exactly. He's completely debilitated. He's incapacitated. Like,
Right.
no. Okay, there's an example. You make that decision. Do you want to lift uber heavy weight while you're young and in your prime and then be like that? Then do it.
Right.
If not, make an adjustment. And I feel like we're in a similar stage with CrossFit to where I think only time's going to tell. We have generations of people that are doing it and they're in their 30s or 40s and they're competing at a high level. And I think only time's going to tell. But initially, I'm fine of whatever gets people off of the couch. If
I can see
whatever's
that.
going to get people moving, and I also think as time goes on, I try to remain optimistic with ventures and modalities such as CrossFit, to where as time goes on, I'm hopeful and confident that they're going to change and reframe things in such a way to where it's, and I think they are. I haven't had my toes dipped in enough to. I'm sure there are boxes where they treat that very delicately and sensitively, where they're
Sure.
working with a client they know and they're taking the time to get to know them instead of throwing them in a class and acknowledging, okay, you haven't worked out in 8 years. You haven't worked out in 12 months,
Right.
whatever that looks like. Okay, here's a program that we can put you on
Graduated
that's
kind of
CrossFit rooted, but we're not going to just throw you in class and increase your chance of like rhabdo or anything like
Sure.
that.
So you're saying that you're trying to basically tell people that they need to pay attention to the people that are teaching them about this. There should be a graduated onboarding into something
absolutely.
as extreme. Because I feel like I do the same thing with running, because that's probably more of my expertise than anything is running.
Sure.
And a lot of people will ask me like, how do you do these crazy distances? And I'm like, it's not really, it's a very very long combination of a lot of time spent wearing shoes and sweating, you know, and running outside. And, you know, I found through my own ebb and flow, I can't do treadmills. My knees don't like it, you know, whereas being outside, I think it's just, maybe it's just something in my mind, but you know, I've had a lot of people that will try to get me to build plans for them. And I'm like, man, it really comes down to how the fuck you feel. Cause if you're coming off the couch, I'm not going to throw the mileage at you that I'm doing, you know, I'm going to give you some real slow. And other people are like, well, you know, if you can't do this, then you shouldn't even be trying to run, you know, it's that mocking. So I think it's good to look for that. And if any of you guys are looking to get into something heavy duty like that, I think you should look out for somebody like Pat definitely first and use him as your gateway, because I think this kind of knowledge, you guys have no idea. Most people pay a lot of money for, and you know, that's something that I think, people need to know, is that it really is a knowledge thing. It's not about what you're doing at the gym. It's not how you look while you're doing it. It's, you know, let's get the groundwork laid out and have somebody coach you along. And once you get to the point where you're able to kind of do things on your own, you know, whether that be, man, you know what, I kind of like this lifting thing. Let me try more CrossFit. You know, you've got that framework that somebody like Pat may have laid. So I highly recommend that they check out your service, man. Plug me your website one more time.
Yeah, it's Aware.Training.
Aware.Training. And then they can just reach out to you on there and maybe start some. Yeah,
I've got an application form on there for anybody who's interested. Whether they're needing help with nutrition, exercise, or a little bit of both, but just knowing that there's a pretty heavy element of mindfulness techniques within that.
You will be a thinking mind, I feel. That's one thing. I had another guy in mind. I was like, man, this other guy, he's a personal trainer, but he's a lughead, man. And I was like, man, I just don't want to do it. Like, he was just all about, he was like having the Schwarzenegger lift classes. And like, if you weren't in that class, like he wouldn't even talk to you, you know, at the gym. And it was like, man, I can't get a guy like that. I gotta get somebody that has balance, you know? So thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you.
And you're truly pursuing greatness, and I hope it continues, man. And definitely, if you guys have any more questions or anything like that, do they have just through the website, they can contact you there?
Yeah, I've got a contact form at the bottom of every page, as well as if they want to apply for a newsletter. I send out a couple emails a week. Like every Sunday, I send out an email that's my articles of the week. I kind of scour the internet, find applicable websites and articles that the client or anybody for that matter can kind of apply just little tidbits of information. I just view myself as a professional filter. So they can apply and submit for, you know, free emails to be a part of a newsletter, or contact me directly, as well as apply for coaching.
And I like how you put that, because like being filtered in this day and age with social media, where there's these fucking plans and these pop up this and that, it's good to have somebody to like be like, maybe not, you know, and actually talk about that. So
absolutely,
dude, huge, man. Thank you so much for coming on, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.